Joining me right now to talk about this and also some real developments in Ukraine is a top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, Congressman Adam Smith. It's good to see you, Congressman. Thank you for being here. So you now have this new information from the White House, this second batch of classified government records, not where they should be, not handled as they should. And although Biden and Trump appear to be handling the discovery of documents differently, there are obvious echoes here of the Trump investigation. You deal in classified information. What's your reaction to what you're learning from President Biden?
Well, there's two things. I mean, first of all, both the documents that were discovered at Mar-a-Lago and the documents that have been discovered in the two places with President Biden need to be investigated. The Justice Department needs to look and see how did they get there, who brought them there, what was the purpose, was it inadvertent, was it intentional? Absolutely, we need to look at both of these situations. But there is one very big distinction here. When President Biden's team found these documents in the two locations, they voluntarily, immediately turned them over to the appropriate authorities. President Trump took the position that he didn't have to. He took the position that he was basically above the law. He wanted to keep the documents, and so he would. And the Justice Department and others negotiated with him for well over a year to try and get him to do what President Biden did immediately. Turned the documents back over to the appropriate authorities, and he refused to do that. So they executed a search warrant. So that is the very large difference between these two situations, but both are serious and both need to be investigated.
Do you think a special counsel should be appointed with this?
I'm not sure on that. I think that might be helpful. Just to eliminate any sort of appearance of conflict, since President Biden is still in office. He has appointed the Attorney General and several key Justice Department people, to look at, again, the basic question of how did these documents wind up in a place where they shouldn't be. That does need to be investigated. Those questions do need to be answered. And it is possible that a special counsel might be in the best position to do that. I think that would be perfectly fine. I don't think Congress needs to launch an investigation on this. We certainly didn't do that in President Trump's case. The Justice Department took care of it, and they should.
I want to turn to Ukraine right now. The Russian government just announced yet another change in commanders leading their war effort. This well-known general, I believe you and I have discussed him before, Gerasimov, will now be taking over command. The current commander of Russian forces becoming one of his deputies. Military experts seem a bit perplexed at this. Describing this as something of a mystery that this move is happening in this moment. What do you think it indicates?
Well, I think it indicates a desperation on behalf of President Putin and Russia. I mean, the invasion of Ukraine is not going the way they wanted to. They are facing an embarrassing defeat, and President Putin is still unwilling to abandon his goal of basically eliminating a sovereign Ukraine. And that's the key to getting to peace here, is for Russia and Putin to realize they are not going to take over Ukraine and to be willing actually to negotiate an end to the conflict. But Putin is flailing about, hoping that his initial dream of subjugating Ukraine once again to Russia, as it has been over the course of hundreds of years at one time or another, he clings to that, and he's flailing about trying to figure out how to make it happen when it's clear that it won't. I think that's what it indicates right now.
Defense spending has been a big topic over the last week as we were watching the speakers fight play out and the negotiations going on behind the scenes. We don't know the full picture of how the new House Speaker and his conference were planning to operate, but there are promises of budget cuts. He was speaking about it in his first press conference today. Some of the discussion has also been that they could include cuts to defense spending. Where do you think this is headed? Are you worried?
Yeah, I am worried. There's two things. One, we should have a robust discussion about the fiscal health of this country. We are borrowing a large amount of money. There's economists who will argue that that's okay, that we can make it work. And we have for quite some time. But we should have a discussion about how much money will we spend in the budget. Now, that should be a whole discussion. We're only talking about the discretionary portion of the budget, which is $1.7 trillion out of a more than $6 trillion budget. It's the whole budget, and then also revenue matters. How much taxes are you bringing in order to pay for all this? So we should have that whole discussion. The real worry, however, is the approach that the radical MAGA extremists in the Republican conference want to take, and the McCarthy is willing to go along with, which is to shut down the government, to not pass any appropriations bills, to not pass a CR, and to not raise the debt ceiling, putting us into a real fiscal crisis. That we should not do. And I am very worried that that is exactly what Speaker McCarthy is going to allow to happen over the course of the next 10 to 11 months. We should have a debate about the fiscal policy, absolutely. We shouldn't be shutting down the government or refusing to pay our debts.
I was about to call you Mr. Chairman again. It's a transition for me as well. Congressman, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for watching. As always at this hour, I'm Kate Baldwin. Inside Politics with John King begins right now.